Hello guys, how are you?
I'm Hardeep Singh. Welcome back to your own YouTube channel. IELTS updates and recent exams. For more updates related to recent IELTS exam writing test topics, listening, reading, practice test, and speaking, you got guesswork. Please, guys, participate in everyday listening and reading practice test to achieve your desired band score in your actual IELTS exam. Please hit the like and subscribe button. Press the bell icon for the upcoming notifications. Don't forget like, subscribe and share my YouTube channel and my Facebook page, IELTS updates and recent exams.
Part 1.
You will hear a woman talking to a wedding planner about her wedding. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 4.
Good morning. This is Your Day Wedding Planners. How can I help you? Hello. Yes, my name is Amanda Lumsden, and I've recently got engaged. I'd like to start arranging my wedding, and I'm looking for a wedding planner. How lovely that you are getting married. It's a very big day that should be enjoyed without any stress. You are very wise to be looking for a wedding planner. May I ask when you are wanting to have the wedding? We are looking at next July on a Saturday. I think having it on a weekend is the best idea, so that people can travel more easily, and if we had it on a Sunday, people wouldn't have time to recover, would they? Yes, the whole system is pretty much set up for Saturday weddings. Everything gets much more expensive if you want to have a wedding on a Sunday because of the extra staff costs of working on Sundays. What kind of wedding do you envision? For example, where would you like the wedding to be? We want to get married here in London. It makes it much easier for everyone. Country weddings are lovely, but there is so much involved with travel and accommodation. I'm from here myself, and my fiancé comes from Scotland. It will be easier if they can just all come directly here. And we'd like a church wedding, but I must confess, neither of us is very religious. I just think getting married in a garden isn't very romantic. We could easily organise that for you. The important thing is to set a date. July is wedding season and reception venues book out quite quickly. Have you thought about how many people would be coming? I made a quick list last night, and if all the Edinburgh relatives are able to come, we are looking at about 80 people, I think. That's if no children are invited. Then it would be over 100, so I really don't want to invite any at all. That's a pretty standard size. What you should do is come into our studio so we can discuss your requirements. Would you like to make an appointment?
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 5 to 10.
Can you give me an idea of how much your services cost? I really don't want to waste your time if I can't afford you. Certainly, we have two types of service. You can either have me just as a wedding consultant, where I give you ideas and contacts, but you have to do the actual legwork, like making the bookings, arrangements, and payments. For example, I could advise you on where it should be held and give you lists of things that need to be done, and give you the best contacts for flowers and the wedding cake and rings, etc. That's 3 hours with me in my studio, and it costs £600. Or I do a complete service as a wedding planner where we arrange and organise everything, and our rate is 15% of costs. For example, if what we arrange for your wedding costs £20,000, which is a low average for a church wedding with a 3-course sit-down reception in London, we would add another £3,000 for our fee. Oh, I definitely prefer the second option. I really just want to leave everything up to you. Both of us have very time-consuming jobs in banking, and we just don't have the time to become involved. I'd just like to get some idea of the sort of weddings you've done in the past, just to make sure we are on the same page. If I like what I see, I'll just give you a free hand. You sound like the dream bride. I can give you references too if you like, people you can talk to who have used my services in the past. I could give you as many names as you like. In any case, let's make an appointment so you can come to my studio for a chat. Would Wednesday afternoon suit you, say around 4 p.m? It would be best if I came in my lunch hour. Could I come on Wednesday at 12:30? That's perfect. Do you have our address? Yes, it's 25 Brompton Road. Is that right? Great. We'll see you on Wednesday then. Goodbye.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
You will hear a radio program in which the presenter is interviewing Sally Jenkins, the coordinator of a local allotment garden. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15.
For the last couple of years, Sally Jenkins has been managing an allotment in her town of Springvale. There is a lot of excitement about how you are managing the space. How is it different?
As you know, an allotment is a piece of public land that is broken into small patches of land or allotments for citizens who don't have gardens to be able to grow flowers and food for their own use. When I took over managing this one, it was quite a mess. Only about 20% of the spaces were being used regularly and looking good, while the rest of them were quite barren.
Why was that, do you think?
When I did a phone around to all the allotment owners, I found that the ones who were failing felt terribly guilty because they had taken the space, but then rarely found the time for its upkeep. So I decided to change the way things were managed a bit. I called a meeting of all the allotment holders so we could get together to discuss how we could make the space more workable for everyone. The people who were actively using their space had the option to continue as they were. Most people had originally taken the allotment because they wanted homegrown fruits and vegetables, but they were failing because they were inexperienced gardeners and really did not know what they were doing. The meeting was a great success. No one wanted to give up their plot, though, so we needed to think of ways that the whole space could work better for everyone. We all decided to hold more meetings in the future to exchange ideas. I knew that the key would be to get those who knew what they were doing to get behind the others.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20.
What was decided to improve the allotment?
Firstly, we talked about the type of produce that everyone wanted to grow. The most popular was summer tomatoes, but the main complaint was that they took a lot of maintenance and water and were easily infested with insects. So it was decided that anyone growing tomatoes would also grow them with borage and marigolds, two flowering plants which seem to repel pests. The allotment is organic, so no pesticides are allowed. The watering problem was solved by getting a council grant to install drip irrigation systems in every allotment. This was a major change, which meant people were able to go on holiday and miss some weekends of gardening without risking death for their plants in the hotter months. Another thing that people discussed was that often if they grew something, they would have a glut of one vegetable, such as courgettes, melons or pumpkins, and be unable to consume them all. Most of the group decided to pool their resources and only plant one or two types of plants each, and then share their crops. This way everybody got access to a much wider variety of produce all year. Some people who already had successful allotments and spent a lot of time in them didn't want to change what they were doing, and that was fair enough. These were generally our experts in the allotment anyway. Their plots were successful because they spent a lot of time in them, and they had a great deal of experience and knowledge. These people have turned out to be a fantastic resource for teaching those who have spent less time gardening. Most of the plots had hardened, derelict compost heaps taking up a lot of space. One of the gardeners confessed that the thing he loved most about having an allotment was creating compost. He offered to transform his complete plot into a large compost heap to be accessible to everyone. This has been a huge success, and all the allotment tenants bringing him their vegetable peelings and food waste regularly has meant they visit the allotment more often. We have, and I do not hesitate to boast, the richest, most worm-filled compost resource in the country. Doing it collectively like this has given all the gardeners more space in their own lots to grow things. The allotment is looking wonderful these days, and what has been produced in the last couple of years has been astounding. By working more communally, the gardeners have brought so much food to their tables. But most of all, the great feeling of community that this has fostered has been very heartwarming.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
You hear two students, Mandy and Rupert, talking to their tutor about a website they are designing. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 24. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 24.
Hello, Mandy and Rupert. Well, here we are again. The material you brought to me last week was very incomplete, so I hope you have managed to bring something a bit better this week.
We hope so. This assignment is quite difficult, and because I have a new computer, we are still learning the software. So we still have the same idea for the project, but we have tried bringing it to life a bit more.
Well, website design is an intrinsic part of this graphic design course. I am sorry if I came over as extra tough last week, but I was so disappointed with the layout.
I think it was because we ran out of time. This week, we've really put ourselves completely into it, and I hope you'll be more pleased with the outcome. It's the same concept for a website for a hairdresser, because we still think this is a good idea, but this time we have added a lot of pages. The hairdresser has actually been really helpful. Here's the homepage.
Ah, that is much more visually pleasing. What did you do to change it so much?
We took your advice and went back to talk to the client. Actually, sitting in the salon with her was really useful. We spent a few hours with her, saw the kind of work she did for customers, and had a good look at the decor and the ambience of the place. She had told us over the phone that she wanted a trendy website, but once we got to the salon, we saw our idea of trendy and hers was much different.
The decor was very natural, with light-colored wood and soft lighting. We sat down with her and put together a color ideas book on the tablet, using images that she showed us on social media. That gave us something to work with when we got home.
It's very interesting that you have learnt not just to listen to what the client says, but paid her a visit and asked her exactly what she wants. This image on the homepage is looking very good. Where does it come from?
It's a photo I took of the salon when I was there. I put it through a few filters and came up with this.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 25 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 25 to 30.
Yes, the pages are looking good. And this time you do have more information on the contacts page. There is a map at the bottom right. Very nice. I see you have added a price list. Good, though it probably shouldn't be on the contacts page. So the contacts are the address and phone number on the left. Perhaps you could give the name of the hairdresser too. Oh, you need to add the hours of the salon. That's important.
Oh yes, they're going in the space above the contacts. Now on this page, we have added some images that the client gave us of hairstyles and colors she has done. And if you click this button here, there are photos of weddings that she has done hair and makeup for.
Rather than having to go to the weddings from that page, why not have a separate link in the index for weddings? The photos have been professionally done, so they do look good.
Yes, that's a good idea.
Now, Rupert, I know you weren't very enthusiastic about doing this project when it was assigned to you, and it was quite clear last week that you had left Mandy to do most of the work. Mandy, has he stepped up a bit more since we last spoke?
Yes, he's been on the project 100% this week.
I'm glad to hear that. Rupert, you need to learn that in the world of graphic design, it would be very unusual if all the projects you had to work on were projects you were interested in. The key is to become involved whether you want to or not.
Yes, I understand that now. You know, the more I've worked on this, the more interested I've become. I have learned my lesson.
Okay, so have you shown the website to the client yet?
We wanted you to see it first. Do you approve us sending her a link to it today?
Yes, of course. But make sure you tell the client that this is not the final product and she can add or change anything she wishes. For example, make sure she is happy with the typeface. Also, I'm not sure if it is a good idea to have music on the site. Some people find it a bit off-putting. So I will see you next week and you can tell me what the client's reaction is. Thank you for coming in.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
You will hear a part of a lecture about interest rate. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Since the beginning of the global financial crisis more than 10 years ago, the developed world has remained in an ultra-low interest rate void. Economists are searching for a way out, but now there may not be one. The U.S. economy appeared to be on the path towards more normal interest rates and growth, even though they had become more cautious stepping into 2020. Japan and Europe did not look to be improving anytime soon, and even the incredible expansion that was being witnessed in the case of China was slowing under the pressure of a U.S. trade war. Then the world economy came to a complete halt with the COVID-19 virus shutdowns in a way which has never been witnessed. Production came to a halt, ports were closed, and stock markets plummeted. 10 years after the worst of the crisis appeared to pass in 2019, banks and policymakers were shocked that despite the great steps they had taken to kickstart their economies, normal growth settings would probably not be seen for many years to come. Central banks had tried to get things moving, but even before COVID-19, any time there was the hint of a slight tweak upwards in interest rates, the stock markets reacted negatively, forcing the banks to back off. If central banks try to normalize their monetary settings now, it could risk an even greater crisis. The big question is, will interest rates ever rise again? Are we to expect the current situation to continue as a type of new normal? From the beginning of the century, the very nature of world industries was reshaped by new technology. 30 years ago, the world's biggest companies were mainly fossil fuel energy and motor vehicle manufacturers. Now, the majority are tech companies and banks. The top tech companies, like Amazon, do not require huge capital investments and large workforces like the 20th century industries did. As a result, until very recently at least, savings rates in the developed world had increased, but the demand for capital investment and human resources decreased. In the wake of COVID-19, however, any expectation of unchanging interest rates and high levels of savings is no longer secure, and only time will tell what form the world economy will take in the coming years. Pre-COVID-19, it was believed that the demographic and technological shifts that had been occurring over the previous decade may have permanently set interest rates at levels never previously experienced. Of course, globalization and the lowered cost of imported manufactured products was also another factor when trying to figure out why the world economy seemed to be slowing down. Now, The very existence of globalization is under threat. There are some who believe that the developed world's economies would have slowed down anyway, regardless of whether the 2008 financial crisis had occurred. It seems we may be able to blame something else on the baby boomers apart from climate change. Baby boomers are the generation born between 1946 and 1964, and they have the largest savings, home ownership, and spending power of any of the generations. The oldest segment of baby boomers, those born in the first 10 years after the Second World War, were just starting to enter retirement when the economic crisis occurred. The rest of them, and some older ones who remained in the workforce to recoup capital losses from the crash, will have retired by the end of the decade. This means that they have had to become even more diligent savers in order to finance the years they will not be working. They have been a particularly productive segment of society. Economically speaking, it was probably more down to luck than anything. They were just born at the right time. They grew up in the post-war period of high growth and economic stability. There were few problems to stop this prosperity for them as they moved into the workforce, except perhaps the fuel crisis in the 1970s. During the 1990s, they reached their peak earning period in a time of prosperity and were well positioned to stake their savings in the technological boom. Each month now, until 2031, more and more of them will be going into retirement. As baby boomers retire, we should expect wide-ranging effects. As retirees, not only will they no longer contribute taxes, but they will be spending less, which is not a good recipe for economic growth. Before the recession of 2008, a retiree could invest their savings in the money market and get a 3 to 4% annual return on their investment. Now they would be lucky to get 0.75%. This means that the wealth of the baby boomers is going to dwindle during their retirement. Add to that a growing life expectancy, meaning they will need to support themselves for a longer period, and the amount of these savings that will have disappeared during the COVID-19 crisis, the outlook is not looking so good. Many baby boomers may end up living in poverty at the end of their lives. There are so many unknowns ahead of us economically in light of the current crisis. It is no longer easy to speculate.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
So guys, don't forget like, subscribe and share my YouTube channel and my Facebook page, IELTS updates and recent exams. For more updates related to recent IELTS exam writing test topics, listening, reading, practice test and speaking, you got guesswork. Please guys, participate in everyday new IELTS listening and reading practice tests to achieve your desired band score in your actual IELTS exam. For more IELTS material, visit my official website www.ieltsupdatesandrecentexams.com. The link is given below in the description. If you need PDF files of latest IELTS material, then please join my Telegram channel. So guys, please write your score below the comment section. Again, thanks for listening. God bless you all guys. Stay tuned, stay safe.